Today, we are commemorating the 54th anniversary of Tibetan national uprising, beginning in 1959. This also coincides with the increasing number of self-immolations inside Tibet. What have the Tibetans done to deserve this? We were and we are peaceful people. We have always lived in peace with all our neighboring countries, including China. For many people in the free world, it might seem grotesque that Tibetan people are burning themselves to death. Now the question is, why do Tibetan people burn themselves? People who are as young as 16-year-old and as old as 64 years old, many of whom have not witnessed cultural revolution. All of them have not seen His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but the only thing they witness is how the Chinese government tried to eradicate Tibetan identity. I would like to outline some of the reasons why these Tibetans are being driven to burn themselves. For those who don't have a good understanding of what is going on inside Tibet, Chinese government makes it pertinent that the situation inside Tibet is not made known to the world. That is the reason why they don't allow anyone, whether it's governmental or non-governmental, people to visit Tibet and find the truth or the reality of what is going on inside Tibet. Politically, Tibetans are deprived of all rights. There is no political freedom inside Tibet. Tibetans are also deprived of all kinds of conventional forms of protest. Here in the West, people might think, oh, Tibetans can resort to other ways of protest. Why burn themselves? But the reality is that even if you raise a small slogan, such as Free Tibet, or Long Live His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or even if you put a small poster on the wall, you are imprisoned. And once you are imprisoned and you have to undergo numerous painful torture, which is worse than dying immediately after self-immolation. They have to undergo so much of pain. And once they are released from prison, it's difficult for them to find a way of living. It's difficult to get jobs. Your life becomes miserable. Any Tibetan who has some influence in the community, whether it be a writer or a singer or an environmentalist or a religious leader, they are caught and imprisoned, incarcerated. For example, if a singer who has some kind of patriotic message in their song get caught and imprisoned, and once they are released, they are not allowed to sing anymore. Writers are not allowed to write anymore. That is the kind of political situation inside Tibet. And Tibetans have practiced Buddhism over the last 1,300 years. Tibetans are devout Buddhists. Today, the communist, atheist, agnostic Chinese government wants to be responsible for selection of Tibetan lamas, the reincarnation of lamas. For that, actually, His Holiness has also mentioned many times that first the Chinese leaders should study Buddhism to be in a position to recognize reincarnated lamas. And today in Tibet, people are forced to put pictures of the big four of the Chinese leadership, Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao, in the monasteries, along with statues of Buddha and other deities. The Tibetan monasteries that have been managed by the Tibetan monks and nuns, today you find members of the Public Security Bureau or from the United Work Front in the monastic management committees. And on an experimental level, Chinese communist cadres forced the Tibetan monks, or they set up communist branches in the monasteries, communist women's wings in the nunneries, thereby creating conflict within. When you are not allowed to practice even your religion, which is the very basis of our existence, our way of thinking, our way of life, then you are reduced, your life is reduced to that of an animal. You are not allowed to think freely, you are not allowed to speak freely, and you are not allowed to act freely. That is the reason why monks and nuns, lay people as young as 16 years old, resort to self-immolation, because they feel that that is the only way that they can draw some attention from the Chinese government, from the international community, so that their sufferings are alleviated. Tibetan language forms the bedrock of Tibetan culture. Today, all official languages are in Chinese. In the last few years, Chinese government has imposed Chinese language teaching only in the schools starting from the primary level. And Tibetan you can learn only as a language. The situation has become such that if you learn Tibetan, your living becomes difficult. Your livelihood becomes difficult. Tibetan Plateau is today being called as the third pole by environmental scientists, including Chinese scientists. Tibet is the fountain of major Asian rivers that flows into Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and into China proper. According to estimates, 47% of the world population, the whole area is highly densely populated. 47% of the world population has, in some way or the other, their livelihood is related to the rivers that flow from Tibet. And Tibetan environment, the Chinese government shows no concern for the Tibetan environment. Nomads are being moved. By 2016-17, 80% of the Tibetan nomads would be moved to compact communities, which is termed as a sedentarization of nomads. This is a multi-pronged policy of the Chinese government. In one sense, it becomes easier for the Chinese government to control the Tibetan population in compact communities, because it's not possible to send one army man after one nomad in the hills and valleys of Tibet. So once they are moved to compact communities, it's very easy to control them politically. Environmentally, all the land that belonged to the Tibetan nomads are confiscated by the Chinese government. And those lands are being used to move Chinese people into Tibet. Tibetans lose their traditional way of living, and they are also not given training on new ways of living. And that's why many of young Tibetans, their livelihood, their whole purpose of existence is being destroyed. The most significant Chinese policy in Tibet that impacts us and which is one of the most urgent and emerging concern for the Tibetans is the policy of assimilation. Tibet is huge, it's 2.5 million square kilometers. But the population is very less, about 6 million. In Inner Mongolia, 80% are Han Chinese. Only 20% are Inner Mongolians. Today, our friends, Inner Mongolians, they say that our struggle is gone. In Uyghur, you find about half-half population, half Chinese and half Uyghur people. Similarly, in Tibet, all major towns and cities, wherever they can make money, Chinese people have moved in. They don't move to villages where they can make or they can improve the living standard of people. But they move only in cities and towns where they can make money. Tibetans are being discriminated, because of which Tibetans are marginalized economically, politically, socially. Within the Tibetan community, we debate about whether we should go for independence or a middle way approach. For me, the main concern is to preserve the identity of the Tibetan people. Another 20, 30 years down the line, if we don't get to go back to Tibet, Tibet will be flooded by Chinese people. Then even autonomy may not make sense for the Tibetans. Therefore, I appeal to the Chinese leadership. We recognize the fact that we can resolve the Tibetan issue only by negotiating, by talking with the Chinese leadership. If China really believes that Tibetan people are also part of China, then why can't they take care of Tibetan people's aspirations? We have consistently, over many years, have said that we are not seeking separation from China. But the Chinese government keeps on saying that Tibetan separatist forces are doing this. Why are all the Tibetans here meeting here today? To express, because we are not able to bear the pain that our brothers and sisters inside Tibet are going through. So these are largely the various reasons why Tibetans are resorting to self-immolation in a very, very non-violent way. We consider this as the highest form of non-violent act. None of the 107 Tibetans who self-immolated have tried to harm the Chinese people. Normally, when a person gets angry, the tendency is to hurt the other person. But this is not the case in Tibet. They only harm themselves. It's not that Tibetans don't realize that human life is precious. According to Buddhist philosophy, to get human life, it's comparable to a tortoise that is rising out of the deep sea and its neck accidentally falling into the hole of a yoke. That is how much precious we consider human life. And the atheist Chinese government is trying to interpret Buddhism and tell the world that this is against Buddhist philosophy. Chinese government, instead of trying to look into the reasons and address the grievances of the Tibetan people, in tune with the aspiration of the Tibetan people, put more and more and more pressure, more and more repression.